Back in 2016, we made a video about our gaming setups and home studios to show how the different aspects come together to help us make the videos that you've seen on this channel. It's been a few years now, and we constantly get questions and comments about when we might do another tour. So, yeah, it's about darn time, right? Because our setups have changed so much in the last several years, Tri and I have decided to do separate videos this time around. So, here's a look at my gaming setup and studio space as it stands right now in 2023. Tri and I launched My Life in Gaming on YouTube on October 1st, 2013. It's funny to think how things have changed since that first video, How to Beat DuckTales Remastered. We'd spent a year researching on how to get pristine-looking video from game systems, and our first video was intentionally run through a VCR onto videotape to make it look as grungy as possible. This is even funnier when you think about the kinds of videos that we're known for these days.
At the push of a button on your telephone, our game masters are standing by to teach you all the best strategies you need to win.
At the time, I worked out of a small apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for about 5 months before my wife, my 1-year-old daughter, and I packed up and moved to the Midwest. The final episode of My Life in Gaming that I built in that apartment was the original Phantasy Star video, which was in production concurrently with the Klonoa Door to Phantomile episode. So although I don't have any real video evidence of my gaming setup in that apartment, I can tell you that it wasn't of much note. In fact, I don't think I could even consider it a gaming setup at all. I just had a couple of systems crammed into an entertainment center, while most of my older consoles were in a storage bin in the back of my closet. Thinking back on it now, I wonder how different things would have been if the Mister was around then. Still, I do have a pretty good look at my setup in the rental house that we moved into just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio in February of 2014, thanks to RGB 102 and our RGB Masterclass series. It's not branded as a setup tour, but it basically was. If you've seen it, you'll recall that I had most of my game systems sitting on a wire shelf that I got from Target, but I could only have one sending video to my TV or capture card at a time. It wasn't too involved because I didn't know how long I'd even be living there. Turns out, it wouldn't be long at all, and the final episode that I made in that house was the Space Harrier series video. After 9 months and a second child on the way, we moved into a house the next town over. The attic, which was converted into an apartment by the previous owners, was where I'd make my parts of the show for the next 5 years. It was cool to finally have a home that was our own, and I could really dig in and have some fun customizing the space. Except that the house was nearly 140 years old. It was sweltering hot up there in the summer and absolutely ice cold in the winter. Still, I managed to transform the attic into a pretty sweet setup overall. I did do a more off-the-cuff, behind-the-scenes style update in 2019 though. A lot has changed, I guess, since 2016. As my kids got older, we began looking for a house that wouldn't require quite as much work, and eventually we found one at the right price that had everything that we were looking for. Not to mention a finished basement that had a ton of potential.
Well, so I guess this is it. This is the final stream from that house.
Yep.
Wow, yeah, it's after midnight.
It is.
As we closed out the Turok Dinosaur Hunter comparison stream at the tail end of December 2019, I began to tear down the setup that I'd spent so long establishing. I'd like to say that I was sad, but I was definitely ready to move on. So I've been living in this house for almost 3 years now, and that empty canvas of a basement has become this. I knew going in that I wanted to make this a central space where I could enjoy almost all my hobbies, interests, and profession. Sit back, play some games, or watch a movie. Maybe tinker around with this and that. But I also wanted it to be utilitarian for capturing game footage, shooting B-roll of different devices, and editing video on my PC. I had ideas of how I was going to make this happen, but when everything shut down in March of 2020 because of COVID-19, well, let's just say that I had a lot more time to work on this space. I don't think this whole setup would be nearly as elaborate as it is if that hadn't happened. I not only ended up with something that blows all of my expectations away, but I also learned a whole slew of new skills while working on it, such as running additional electrical lines and outlets. So let's get started with an overall layout. So while it might look bigger than the older space, it's actually not. It's all around the same square footage, but a lack of walls dividing it up, it'll play tricks on you. So my main gaming setup is along the wall here, complete with an LG OLED C8 as my main TV and a couple of PVMs to the side. The consoles, more than 30 of them, are all hooked up on the shelves over here. On the opposite wall is my game collection, or game library as I like to call it. Things were in alphabetical order at one point, but I've moved stuff around enough that things have gotten pretty chaotic at this point. I apologize to everyone because I'm about to trigger your OCD when it comes to alphabetizing your games, but sorry, I'll eventually get everything back in order, I promise, but it won't be in this video. Along the short wall at the end is my PC setup, where I do just about everything. Capture gameplay, live stream, edit, or just work. All the way down at the other end is the B-roll set. This table is where I shoot a lot of the product footage that has become increasingly more prominent in our videos over the years. So yeah, there's a lot going on down here. Probably too much, honestly. It's densely packed, but I think it has a pretty nice, cozy feel to it. I originally thought I was going to do this video in a way that separated everything out and it then went through each aspect one by one, kind of like I did in the 2016 video. But the more I tried to box things up like that, the more I realized that each part, the gaming setup, the computer setup, and the video setup, are all linked in various ways that it would be nearly impossible to compartmentalize aspects in a clear way. So instead, I'm just going to do my best to go through my thought process, which has already changed a dozen times since I started doing this whole thing, and then I'm just going to talk about a variety of aspects that I hope you'll find interesting. First, I'm going to start off with some of the general aesthetics.